Hi everyone, the weather has turned in the UK and I'm wearing my jumpers again and I'm very happy about it. I'm just filming an introduction before I pass you over to Past Me. I would like to introduce you to my friend Anna. You've met her before. A few years ago we did some videos when we were both judging the Costa Book Awards. Anna and I have known each other for about 10 years. She used to be a librarian, then she worked at the Bookseller, now she's a journalist and runs the Lush Book Club. She also has a YouTube channel, which I'll link down below, and she's just written her first book, and it's a book for book lovers. That's you and me. Actually, essentially it's young you and me because this is middle grade, but I read it and loved it as a 31-year-old, so I say it appeals to all ages in the same way that I hope Franklin tapped into that nostalgic book-loving feeling that we older people have, and that's absolutely fine. So this book is called Tilly and the Book Wondrous. It's the first in a series called Pages & Co, which will be a trilogy, and it's about an 11-year-old girl called Tilly who lives in a bookshop that's owned by her grandparents, and she discovers that her favourite characters from her favourite books can come out of the books and talk to her, and perhaps she can also tumble into those books as well. There are rules as to why this happens, and it's controlled by a place called the Underlibrary, which I found absolutely fascinating. So I decided to record a podcast with Anna. I have a podcast called Books with Jen, which you can find on the podcast app. So if you'd rather listen while you're out and about, you can search for it on iTunes, on the podcast app on iPhone, or on Stitcher on Android or SoundCloud. Alternatively, if you're watching this and you would just happily like to listen to it on here, then just continue listening. Anna and I had a chat on her sofa whilst eating donuts, and we talked about how important books are to us and writing books for children and what that's like. Oh, also, before I hand you over to Pass Me, we also wanted to do a book giveaway, so listen to the end of the podcast where we talk about that. But we're giving away a copy of The Doll Factory by Elizabeth McNeil, which is one of my most anticipated releases of 2019. So this is a proof copy. It's not out till May next year, but one of you can get your hands on it. The giveaway is open internationally and closes on the 10th of October. You can leave a comment down below to enter or tweet me. And I think that was everything that I had to say. Yeah, okay. I'm going to hand you over to the podcast, or as I said, you can search for the podcast elsewhere. I'll leave links down below. I hope you guys have a great week. I'll speak to you later. Lots of books love. Bye. I feel like you and I are kindred spirits. We both grew up in the Northeast.
Yes.
And we're both booksellers slash librarians slash lover of books.
Yes.
And we both write about books.
Yes. Yes.
We are real life book wanderers, huh?
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying to Anna before I started recording that I was really nervous to read her book. I'm always really nervous to read any book by someone that I know.
Yeah,
but
and I understand
so
that.
Good.
Oh,
Anna's
thank you.
Good. I
Thank
cried.
You. That makes me so happy. That's the weird thing about writing books, that you just love hearing that you've made your friends cry.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm like, yes, great.
Yeah. The book's also so visual. I could totally picture it as some kind of TV or film. I was imagining like Jim Broadbent as Tilly's granddad or something like that. Do you have any ideal, like, if it was to ever be made into something?
Do you know, the only one I have an idea for is actually the one that you'd think would be the hardest, which is for Tilly.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Because I went to see Fun Home at the Young Vic, and the girl who was playing young Alison blew me away. And she's just the right age, and she was incredible. So, and I mean, children age very quickly is the problem. But she's just how I imagine Tilly. And I mean, I wouldn't say no to Jim Broadbent, you know, if he wanted to get involved. I don't have very specific ideas of what they look like in my head. So I don't have very kind of specific actors or actors that I kind of imagine as them. And it's easy to get carried away with these things as well. So
no, I think so too. And to be honest, when I'm writing, I don't picture exactly what someone looks like. I know some writers who have really detailed mood boards and they found someone that they really base someone off, and I don't know. Whenever it's like trying to look at something out the corner of your eye or a floater, like when I try and focus on something, they kind of move a bit.
Exactly. Yeah. I have exactly the same
fuzzy
thing.
around the edges.
And I feel like as well, because a lot of the book is about the personal relationship we have with characters.
Yes.
And I really enjoy sort of leaving that space for people to imagine them differently. But then it caused problems with the illustrator because I don't physically describe any of the characters.
Yeah.
And so when the illustrator, Paula Escobar, was asked to draw them, and then I was like, but I was really annoying, and I was like, I'd really rather that the characters weren't drawn. Can we draw like other stuff? But we did have to do some of those. So the silhouette of Tilly on the cover, honestly, we went back and forth.
I need to look
so
at that.
many times on her, and basically as well, it kept just being drawn like me, like to ginger curly hair.
I was picturing a young you, I have to say.
This does seem to be common. Like this, I've had that a lot, and I think I probably need to just, even though I don't really see Tilly as, like, she obviously has elements of me, but she's not me when I was 11.
But I don't think that other people will think that. It's just because I know you.
Yeah.
And surely the people who've read it so far kind of know who you are as well.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. Everyone imagines her as Ginger.
Yeah.
And that's
I imagine everyone is Ginger, to be fair. So, yeah, I think it's fine.
I'm just going to embrace it. That's fine.
Yeah.
She can have ginger hair.
So it's been so fun, I wouldn't say watching this process. I haven't examined this process closely, but we were having brunch when you were in the middle of just about to sign for these books.
Wow, okay.
Which feels so long ago.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah, it was about 2 years ago.
Yeah. So talk us through everything. When did you start writing Pages and Co?
Okay, so I had a bit of a backwards sort of journey to all of this, and one which I'm sometimes a bit wary of talking about because I don't want to seem at all like ungrateful or like there was any nepotism involved. But when I worked at the bookseller, just because of my job, I knew lots of agents, and I had a few agents ask me if I was writing. And I'd always been like, no, there is enough good books in the world. I don't want to write something just because of the sort of opportunity. And I love writing about other people's books. I'm very creatively satisfied by that. And then I just had this idea, and I had to have a go. And an agent, so my agent turned out to be my agent, Claire Wilson, but an agent I'd admired from afar for a while, happened to just message me just after I'd had this idea and said, do you write? And I was like, well, actually, no, but I've just had this idea and I don't suppose you fancy having a coffee. And so I met up with Claire and we just got on really well and told her about the idea and she liked it. And then she was like, if you do write it, please do.
So when was this?
So that was probably 3 years ago. So then I sort of like messed around and dabbled with it, and then I wrote a first line, which isn't the first line anymore, but a first line that at the time I really liked.
What was it?
It is still in there actually, and it's the title of the first chapter. It's it was the view. What was it? It was the start of the summer holidays, and I don't know, something about the view from the gates of a fairground, and I just love the idea of like something. The holidays opening out. Yeah, so it's later in the chapter because I couldn't quite bring myself to get rid of it. And that just was the way I like wrote my way in. So I wrote about 10,000 words, and then we went out on submission, and that was summer 2016.
Yeah.
So we went out on submission with 10,000 words and sold it, and then I wrote it between sort of September 2016 and March 2017.
Yeah, and we should say at this point that you had submitted it as a standalone.
Yes.
The publisher was like, have you thought?
Yes. So everyone who offered for it offered for 3 books.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes you just, like they have good instincts for these things. They know. So it was a lot smaller in my head to start with, and it was much more focused on the bookshop and characters coming into the bookshop.
Yeah.
And more of Tilly's life outside the bookshop and the characters in the book sort of helping her with that.
Okay.
And then I just got caught up in the idea of, I just wanted to make it more magical and more fantasy, and I just sort of got caught up in the idea of what would a sort of the community around book wandering look like, and that very much was what I wanted to write, and it seemed a very natural place for the story to go. And
having read it, I can't imagine it being a standalone now. I mean, the world is so huge because there are so many places that you can take it.
Right.
It's amazing. One of my favourite bits in Harry Potter is when they go to St Mungo's and when they go to the Ministry of Magic.
Yeah.
And the book gave me the warm feelings for those things.
That makes me very happy, although I'm always deeply anxious when anybody references Harry Potter, because I feel like it's almost a bit of a curse.
No, it's not a curse. It's not a curse. No,
that makes me very happy.
Because it doesn't remind me of Harry Potter.
Okay,
I'm not thinking, Anna's done Harry Potter. That's not what I mean.
No, that's a ridiculous. Yeah.
No, but it's just it gave me that feeling where you get I don't know, inside a world that you feel like you know, which is why I think I like the St. Mungo's book so much, because that St. Mungo's part of the book so much, because it's an insight to the adult world when we haven't seen that before. And that's what you get in here when they go to a place called the Underlibrary, and it's like the adult working world. And I love the kids and everything to do with them, but when you just want to see how it works, I had
the most fun creating
the
all of that.
Underlibrary.
And even though I got a bit tangled up sometimes in the book wandering rules, it was so much fun. And like you say, like now when I think about it, it seems mad that I considered doing it differently. But
you have to start from somewhere, and then you work out. So we should explain, maybe without giving too much away, what the Underlibrary is. So it's in the British Library.
Yes. So, as the name suggests,
it's underneath the British Library.
Sometimes I tried to, like, in my head it was just called the Underlibrary, and then I was like, oh, maybe it needs, like, a snazzier name, but then actually I just really... kind of the simplest, I think simplest sometimes works best.
Yeah.
So, there is, actually, you've read the proof, so we've slightly tweaked it in the... Only... We got locked in a debate about... So there's a bit in the middle of the British Library called the King's Library, which if you've been there, you'll know. But it's like this kind of tower of very old books, which hasn't got public access unless you kind of book a tour. And inside there's the entrance to the Underlibrary. And we had a big debate about how noticeable it would be, because in the proof it's still a lift, but now it has an out of order sign on it. So there's a seemingly out of order lift. It's the sort of things you'll know this, like you get locked in the most nitty gritty. Editing it's not really, we didn't do a lot of sort of big structural changes, but you get like locked in these tiny discussions about, but if there was just a regular lift, then surely people who work there would go in the lift, and like what would you do, and just small things like that. The illogical conversations that you have to have. Like at the moment I'm talking with Thames and Hudson about the third Franklin book, which is coming out next year, and in that it's Franklin's birthday and he's 606, and Thames and Hudson had thought, or someone at Thames and Hudson thought that meant he was really old, so they came back and they were like, Jen, we really like this, but at the end can we reference Franklin's age again and how he's happy to be going on adventures when he's so old? And I was like, but he's not old. But he's 606. I'm like, yeah, but for a dragon. And then you have to have these hilarious conversations. You have these conversations, where it's like the whole, you just have to accept that the world you've created is real. And you get into these really specific, serious conversations about this magic that you've made up. But magic must have rules. Yes, and it's always better. To sound like it's much better that there is an out of order sign on the lift, and it's just little touches like that often, like, really, I think, elevate things and bring them to life. So people go into the Underlibrary, and the Underlibrary is it's the kind of community, the hub around British book wandering. So it's where the librarians work, which. Tangent. So as an ex-librarian, one of the things I'm endlessly frustrated by is sort of the cliches you get about librarians, and how often, even in books, librarians are these very cliched shushing. They're either, like, not in children's fiction so much, but obviously they're either like sex pots, or they are shushing grumpy old ladies who hate books and people with lots of cardigans. And I hate that, because I worked in libraries for years, and so few, I was going to say none, most of the librarians, they're not like that. And I really wanted to write I wanted to write at least one cool librarian. So there's the head librarian at the Underlibrary, Amelia Whisper, is just my favourite. But just, librarians who are regular people, and I think they're cool. There are still cardigans, though. I know, but I like that too. You need cardigans, though, I swear, especially in the bookshop that I worked at, was so freezing. Exactly. Yeah, you need them. Cardigans are good. There has to be some realism. Well, did you have a lot of fun naming the characters? Yes, it's one of my favourite things to do. It's really nice in middle grade, because you can do that. You know, there's a librarian called Amelia Whisper. Like, the people who run a bookshop, their surname is Pages. Names, and you can do that, and you can be a little bit more knowing and almost audacious with it, and sort of tell the audience something about the character, and it doesn't matter that that's not really what a person. And I just love, like, I spent ages coming up with my baddie's name as well, and who's called Enoch Chalk, and I'm really proud of that name. I really, like, when I worked out, I was like, yes, I've got it. So it's really satisfying, and I'm having a lot of fun. I'm writing the second book at the moment. I'm having lots of fun with my new characters, coming up with the names. Although it's a nightmare, isn't it, until you've worked it out. And actually there's a character in the book who works in the bookshop called Jack, who's called Jack just because it's just like a name, it's just like a boy's name, and I know someone called Jack, and I was just like, and then actually he just ended up being Jack, so he stayed Jack. And yeah,
I don't know if you know this person, but Jack in my head is Matthew Land from Blackwell's Oxford.
I don't know him.
You don't? Oh, you have to meet him because he is.
Oh, really?
Jack. He's great. He painted the mural on their wall, and he is an illustrator, and he just takes great pleasure in doing all of the events.
Amazing.
And he's the sweetest guy.
Okay, fab.
Matthew, if you're listening to this, you're in a book. You should read it. He's great.
Okay, that makes me a bit happy. I have to go and find him.
Go find him. Go meet him. Go find him. We didn't address this at the beginning, but why did you decide to do middle grade?
So when I first started thinking about it, it was going to be YA, which I think I didn't really stop to think about it. So many of my friends are YA writers. And I think I just sort of assumed if I wrote a book, it would be YA because that's what so many of my close friends write.
Yeah.
And so Tilly was actually 17 in the very, very first draft. Because actually, so part of the idea came from, have you seen the film Empire Records? It's like a 90s...
No, but I think I saw you reference that somewhere, yeah.
It's like this amazing /naff, like 90s, I think, like film it's got like a young Renee Zellweger and young Liv Tyler in it. It's about like a group of teenagers who work in a record store in America.
Oh, maybe I have seen bits of this.
And I loved it so much when I was a teenager, and I really... One of the things I was sort of pulling from was the idea of a British bookshop version of it, and a group of kind of teenagers working in a bookshop, and that never really kind of ended up being in the draft at all, like a group of teenagers. But Tilly was 17, and it just didn't work. Also, it turns out I don't think I'm very good at writing YA. I don't think I would, like, I'm not good at gritty.
Okay.
And I just felt like I was being, you read YA that's so patronising, and it's like, oh, the youth of today, and I just felt like I was writing one of those terrible YA books which was completely divorced from what teenagers are like. And I knew that because I worked with teenagers for years, and I was like, what am I doing? These aren't real people. And then I just had like an epiphany moment basically where I was like, oh, what happens if she was younger?
Yeah.
And so I made her 11, and everything just fell into place, and that was when I wrote those first 10,000 words really, really quickly. I love middle grade as well. I love reading middle grade. I read more middle grade than I read YA. And also the books that I loved as a child were what we would class as middle grade.
Such as?
Now, like, the classics, basically. And a lot of the books that are in there, so things like E. Nesbit and Anne of Green Gables and Eva Ibbotson as well, and sort of Diana Wynne Jones's, like, Chrestomanci series. I think probably those... middle grade and YA didn't really sort of exist as such. Yeah. But I think probably they'd be published, like, as middle grade because they've got that kind of classic feel.
Like When Hitler Saw Pink Rabbit.
Yes. So books like that.
Carrie's Wolf.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Those were the books that I loved. And YA wasn't really a thing when I was a teenager, and what we had was very American, so like I read Sweet Valley High books and that. So again, it's that whole thing in hindsight, of course it was that it couldn't have been any other way. And also just because you can have that sense of, not that you can't have a sense of magic and wonder in YA, but you can have you can have an earnestness with middle grade, and I mean that as a compliment. Like, I love writing earnest books. I'm not very cynical I like to think I'm not very cynical as a person, and I don't like reading cynical books either. And with middle grade, you can just be sincere. That's maybe a better word than earnest.
Yeah, I know what you mean, especially with YA. I mean, being a teenager, Jesus Christ, I do not want to go back to those years.
Oh my goodness,
but there's so many things going on in your head at that point. You're developing so much as a person, regardless of whatever happens to be going on around you and any magic. So it's just extra... I don't know, it's just, that's a whole other story in itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and I think it's on my natural writing style. I think the thing about a debut is it kind of falls into being some sort of like instinctual thing.
Yes. Because
you're not really thinking so much. It's your first idea for a book. So, and it just worked in that voice, and it just was. So it wasn't so much that I was like, I need to make it middle grade. It was that I need Tilly to be younger.
Also, when you're that age, that is the age where you're developing really personal feelings towards books and learning what you really like.
Right.
So the magic fits in with that too.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so you wrote the book, you sent it, they said, we want 3.
Yay! And then, so then I wrote the first draft over about 6 months, and then there was a bit of a delay because I had a bit of an editor kerfuffle in that I am on my third editor.
Okay.
So my first editor left, she moved to Amsterdam. She she acquired it but hadn't done any editorial work on it.
Okay.
And then I had another editor who I worked with it for the most part, but there was lots of just stuff, like changeovers and stuff. So she edited most of it, Sarah, and she was amazing. So then we edited it relatively... so initially when they bought it, they were contemplating publishing it October last year.
Yeah.
But then they realised that actually if they were asking for a first draft in March, that was an incredibly tight turnaround for editing and then leaving time for PR and proofs and stuff. So before I'd even finished the first draft, that was moved. So then we edited it quite leisurely over probably a year.
Yeah.
And during that time, Sarah left HarperCollins and I have now worked with Rachel. And it was a really nice process because we had a little bit of time. Because once we decided to push it, we contemplated doing it in the spring, but it's a very autumnal book.
Yeah. It's set in October half term.
Yes, and it would have been silly to not publish it any other time.
Yeah.
So editing it was actually a really enjoyable experience. I think because I am a journalist, I am very used to feedback on my writing, and actually when you're a journalist, feedback is less caring. I'm very used to having an editor just be like, make this a bit better, make this a bit shorter, great, thanks, do it by next week. And I've had to develop a fairly thick skin for feedback on my work. So actually when you have an editor who's being so caring and thoughtful over everything you've done, I didn't find it... I loved getting the editorial notes because it was so much kinder than editorial notes that I'm used to.
Does yours leave comments not just about stuff to change, but I really like it?
Yes. Yeah. And you never get that as a journalist. They just say what you have to make better. You don't get you don't get positive feedback, or it's just like, great, thanks.
I think book editors realise that we writers are fragile people.
Yes.
And
it's lovely. I felt so looked after and cared for. And I also just really like editing. I like making my work better. I like learning from people who know their stuff. And Sarah Hughes, who did the majority of the editing, she's amazing. Like, she's edited like Percy Jackson, like the Worst Witch books. Like she just knows. She's incredible, and the book is so much better because of it. And I loved working on it and having her perspective on it. So editing was really enjoyed it.
Was there any huge change that you both agreed on during the process, or was it just little things here and there?
There wasn't any big sort of there wasn't any fundamental changes.
I just find that really interesting because I think I don't know how true this is, book rumours in the industry, but I heard that the first Harry Potter book had a bit of book 6 in it to begin with, and I'm just like, wow,
that's interesting. I've never heard that. That is interesting.
Maybe it's a lie.
I think I was kind of prepared for more structural editing. It was a lot more kind of we did a lot of work on the pacing, and I think just because it's sort of the first book, I've never written a book before, even I don't have any desk drawer novels, and again it's that whole I'm used to writing articles, and my sense of pace was, I found within each chapter there was a nice sense of pace because I'm used to writing in that sort of length chunks. But
also at the beginning it's difficult because you've got so much to explain and so much setting up to do. Yeah, and also I had the first draft was a little bit too wish fulfillment-y because basically I just wanted to use the books that I loved. So probably the biggest change was that this is it's not too spoilery, but in the finished book they go into Treasure Island at one point. I mean, there's literally a picture of Long John Silver on the cover, so But that was The Wind in the Willows originally. Oh, okay. So they went to The Wind in the Willows and they had a picnic with Ratty and Mole, which was a delightful scene. And my editor was like, this is very nicely written, but nothing happens with the plot. Yeah. And she was like, you need more peril. Yeah. Because basically, as me, I was like, well, if I could book wander... Yes. And obviously you'd go to all the nice bits. You'd go and have a picnic with Ratty and Mole on the riverside. But of course... for a book, you need a little bit more peril. So. I like that change though, because it is very different to the rest of it, and it's the first time where the characters think, "Oh shit!"
Right, and that's the thing. I'd said, it's said that you can. So if you're book wandering, if you're injured or you die in a book, it's you're real. Dead, yeah. But there was no, until it sort of ramps up to the finale, there was nothing to show that. And this is again just an editor. As soon as they say it, you're like, of course. Yeah. But it needed that external person to be like, and as soon as she said that, because then again, she's just great. Sarah's amazing because she doesn't say do this. She's like, right. And so she didn't say, you know, put Treasure Island in. She was like, maybe think about this, this and this. And so I love the Muppet Treasure Island. And I also had issues that when I wrote it, I realised that some of the references are not true because I was pulling from the Muppet film, not the book. So I read the book when I was a kid, and I read certain bits to like get for my book.
Yeah.
But basically, so at proofs, so I had sent it to my friend Chris Smith, who's co-writer of Kid Normal, and he had messaged me, and he was like, I don't want to be that guy, but like, do you want me to tell you? He was really nice about it. So do you want me to tell you if there's a mistake? And I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, yes, because we've got time to change it. But I was like, what? Just worrying that it was some like fundamental like contradiction of the magic. And he was like, so basically there's a character so they're on the Hispaniola, and there's a character, and he was like, he's not on the Hispaniola, like he dies at the start of the book. And I realised that it's because I was pulling my references from the Muppet Treasure Island, not the book. And so that was really easy to sort, and it was fine. But yes, in my head, like Long John Silver is what's his name? Tim Curry. So I'm not going to pretend that that's not the case.
No.
I love that film so much.
Yeah.
And I listened to the soundtrack while I was writing those scenes. But again, it's that thing when you look back, and Treasure Island is the perfect book to use in that scenario. And I also, you get better at writing as you write, because that chapter actually, even though that was one of the biggest changes, that was, once it was written, was one of the chapters that had the least editing done. And once I sort of worked it out, it just worked, and it fitted perfectly, and it was really fun to write.
And now that it's going to be 3,
yes,
and you're writing them, is it fun to leave Easter eggs for yourself?
Yes, I have tried to, because of not realising it was a series, I didn't have it wasn't all planned out at the start. So I have the top arc sorted, I know that. But a lot of the specifics I'm still working out. So there's small things, there's things I know I want to do in the third book that I'm able to sort of leave references to. But it's just about trying to, you want to have some Easter eggs, but you also don't want to write yourself into a corner. So then when I come to actually write book 3, I'm like, oh my goodness, why did I do that to myself? I thought I was being so clever, but I've just caused myself loads of problems. So I'm trying to get the balance right. It's easier with book 2 because I'm obviously just 2/3 of the way through the series, whereas when I was writing book 1 I was more worried about, and also just because I had a really tight deadline to finish that first draft, but I had more of a chance in the edits when I had a chance to sort of sit down and think about the rest of the series a bit more, to then go back and pop some stuff in.
It's always fun to notice what's important later, so I look forward to finding that out.
But hopefully it all comes together.
You're like, I'm looking forward to finding out
yes,
too.
Me too.
So apart from the plot of the book, which is obviously massively important to any book, what key things did you want to put in there that you think are important?
I mean, the obvious one is just that love of books and book places, as in bookshops and libraries. And it's not a cliche because it's real, but it's obviously a fairly universal.
Oh, there's a post.
It's a fairly universal feeling. But we talked about, said right at the start, like, I just love books about books.
Yeah.
And I wanted to write one.
Yeah.
And I wanted my book to be full of the things that I love to read. And I love books about books and books about stories. I love books that pull in. I'm such a sucker for, I like fictionalised books about, fictionalised lives of writers and references to fictional characters. So that was very much the kind of core thing. I also wanted to have we talked about great librarians, but I also wanted to have great grandparents. I was really close to my grandparents, and particularly my granddad is very much Tilly's granddad. That's the only character that's kind of like an explicit sort of inspired by a real person, and he was really formative to my relationship with books and reading, and so I wanted to have a little bit of him in the book. I'm actually I'm writing an article about him at the moment, and I just get really emotional about it, but he was so supportive of my writing and reading, and he would have been so incredibly proud, and I find it really hard that he doesn't know, but then that's why it's special that he's in the book, you know?
Yeah, that's
so
true.
that was really something it's such a privilege as a writer to be able to create things that exist beyond you, and
That's true.
it's nice to have a bit of my granddad in the book.
You're going to make me cry. It's not even my granddad.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
1,500 words about it. I can't. I've been crying. I have to write it in really small chunks because it makes me really emotional. But yeah. So Tilly's granddad is really the heart of the book in many ways, and you have to have some kind of like parent shenanigans in a children. You know, you have to get the parents out of the way for adventures to happen.
Is it Philip Pullman who said that? Yeah. For any great adventure, it's truth to university knowledge. For any great adventure, a child must first lose their parents.
Right, and it's true, you know. But I also really wanted there to be that really positive parental-esque relationship with her grandparents, and she's really close to her grandparents, and that was important.
Are they going to go to France?
Yeah, how do you know that?
God, I was just thinking that because I was thinking of Oscar and...
Yeah, no, sorry, it does say in the book. I was like, how on earth to do... Oscar is half French.
Yes,
so that's, so Oscar is Tilly's new friend.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they do. They go to...
We were like, how do you know that?
Yeah, so they go to Paris in the second book, which is lots of fun. To visit Oscar's dad.
Research trip to Paris.
I know. I am probably going to try and get away with that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What I love as well, there's a nod to parents reading the book too, and things that they can find as well. So near the beginning of the book, the very beginning of the book, Tilly's granddad says, I think it's their granddad, you should get out of the house. You can come with me to the woods. And I'm just thinking fairy tales. Or you can come with me and pick up the flowers for the party. And I'm like, Mrs. Dalloway! It made me so happy.
I think you have to be really careful, because you never want to write a children's book where it doesn't work. Everything has to work for children.
Yeah.
Because you know, when you read those books, you go to those films where it's like, there's jokes for kids and there's jokes for adults, and they're separate jokes.
Disney are really good at melding those two things.
They are. And it was really important to me that even though I wanted to put lots of references in for adults to enjoy, it was really important to me that none of them were at the expense of the child's reading experience. So it's things that can just read as details, but it's just, as a reader, it's just so much fun being able to like slip in lots of little references, and some that are like foreshadowing for future things, and some which are just for fun. The cleverest things are often the things that just happen. And not you're like, oh my goodness, I need to get a reference to this in. But sometimes you're just writing a scene and it just works, and you're like, that's aligned nicely. But you have to take those moments, because so much of it is such hard graft and terribleness that I think it's okay to say that sometimes it just works. And
sometimes it does.
Wonderful.
People always ask you like, is it fun writing a book? And I always laugh. And I'm like, I cry all the time. I hate it. But at the end of every day, when I look back over what I've done, I love it. And that's fine. Not necessarily what I've written, but I love the having written.
Right.
Yeah.
But
and
to get that way, where you're just in it and it's working and it's magical and it's such... I'm just like, I can't believe someone lets me do this.
Yeah.
Like, literally, I'm just I mean, obviously I'm making up stories, but like... There's just sometimes I have this like kind of out of body experience where I'm typing and I'm like, I can just type anything. I'm just literally making up stories. Like, what a privilege.
And going back to that, inserting things that have to work as part of the story, not literary references this time, but just things that just make me happy and are going to make so many people happy. Like Oscar having dyslexia, and him asking if listening to audiobooks is reading, until he's like, of course that's reading.
Yeah.
And Amelia saying at some point, can you go find a tea lady or maybe even a tea man? It's like, yes!
I can't resist.
If I love it.
I think with Oscar it's really important, because I think that I didn't want to have... It is a very booky book, but it was really important to me to like show that there's no one way of reading, and that any sort of reading is valid. And like, I worked as a school librarian for nearly 5 years, and I worked with children who just had really different relationships to books, and there's not one which is better or more important. So it was really important to me to have Oscar sort of have a slightly different relationship to books to Tilly.
Well, I think probably around the same time when you were doing being a librarian and I was being a bookseller, they were talking about age ranging coming in, and there was a huge backlash, rightly so, against it, and we did like a whole campaign against it because it's just so detrimental to a child's love of reading. Age ranging, they wanted to have standard age ranging on the back of every book, and I think it had been, at least part of it was kick-started by someone complaining about a Jacqueline Wilson book in Asda, because Nick Sherritt does all of the illustrations for all of the books, and one of the teenage books had been put in the middle grade section. A grandparent had bought it for their granddaughter and it had a rude word in it, so they complained and said, we need age ranging and all of this stuff. But it, you know, with people who have different reading abilities, different reading ages, and I'm air quoting here because again that's age ranging itself, you don't want to make a child feel like they're reading below their age, because as you know, as a librarian and bookseller, parents always come in and go, my child is so far advanced and so above their age and all of that. And so age ranging is bad. Yes. And I think anything that dismantles that is great.
Yeah. I also think it makes me think of, I think, how great what Barrington Stoke are doing with their books that are appropriate in tone and subject for teenagers, but that are appropriate also for dyslexic readers. And I think that's so great that they're doing that. So they're proper, like, it's teen booking content and vibe, but
well, Hotkey do that as well, don't they? They have, it's not age ranging, but they have a wheel on the back, which says what's inside, so theme wise, so you can work out via content whether or not it's suitable
because that's the thing. No one is saying that we shouldn't give help so that parents and grandparents can choose the right book.
Yes.
But there's ways of doing that isn't just whacking a number on it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why librarians and booksellers are so important.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, if you go to a bookshop and just ask a bookseller, then you're fine.
Yeah. Or you can tweet us as well. That's okay
always.
Too.
Yes, always.
And then go to a bookshop or a library. Absolutely. So, writing a book, you've been in the book industry for so long.
Yes.
And you've seen everything from various different perspectives, from friends of writers, and then from publishing.
Yep.
I think, I mean, I don't want to speak for you. I felt like I understood everything and I knew it and I knew how it worked. And that's true to some extent, but there are always things that you didn't know or things that surprised you. So what have been the things that have surprised you? I thought that knowing a bit more about the process would make, that sounds so naive, would make me more relaxed about it and less stressed. That was nonsense. If anything, it's made me more stressed, and I wish I knew nothing about it. So I was a scout for a bit, so I just worked in foreign rights, and so my goodness, a scout, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is someone who's sent books that are published in other countries, and then you're trying them for translations. Is that right?
Yes. Other way around for us. So we worked for European publishers. So we read books in English and recommended to them, which books they might like to translate. Yeah. And I'm so annoying because I'm always wanting to know exactly what's going on with my foreign rights in a really specific way. And like, I have opinions on publishers in different countries, and like, I just sometimes wish I didn't know as much. But you have to just embrace it because you can't change, and there's so many benefits to understanding.
Yes.
And I do think actually probably there are things that I have found less stressful because I know that publishing is slow. Like, it didn't stress me out when we moved the publication date. Yeah. Because I understood the reasons, and I knew that it wasn't because they hated the book.
Another writer would have completely, like, if someone who didn't understand that, because that is terrifying to be like, we're not publishing for a whole year, because it feels like an eternity. Yeah. It's come around very quickly.
It has. Although it didn't feel, but I understood those reasons. They were really sensible reasons. And publishing, I also understand that publishing in October means that a publisher has faith in your book. Yes. So it was good that they wanted to keep it in the October slot.
And that's because so many are published at that time of year.
Right, it's a very competitive time of year because of Christmas. So it's stuff like that is useful. I'm trying to think of what was the most surprise. I'm not sure I've had any like full-on surprises.
Well, maybe surprises at how you felt about something rather than finding out something new.
I found the whole thing deeply surreal. I still feel a little bit like it hasn't quite sunk in. Yeah. And that I think, so one of my best friends, Katie, describes me as, so when I'm when I'm dealing with something that's particularly sort of heightened emotion, she says I go full Ravenclaw. So basically, instead of just feeling anything, I just go full Ravenclaw and I go straight into my like intellectual brain, and I just like intellectualize everything. And I had like a really stressful year last year with personal stuff, and I definitely did that. And I think I do it with the book, because people keep saying like, oh, did you cry when you saw the book? And I didn't, and I sort of haven't had. And I think it's because I go into that bit of my brain, because I feel like if I start crying, I'm never going to stop, because I'm so overwhelmed at having a book published. And so I think I almost overprotect myself by just being like, okay, this is happening, right, great, okay, and analysing it. And sometimes I feel like when I'm talking to HarperCollins about the book, I forget that I'm talking about my book. I just feel like I'm going to discuss somebody else's book, and we're just being like, oh yeah, no, that's great, yeah, no, I like that. But the only time I've actually just lost it was at my launch. But that was, again, not so much to do with the book as to do with, like...
Can I guess what you're going to say?
Yes.
That people that you've supported in the industry came to support you. Was it that?
Well, a little. It's sort of. It was just... I just, like, looked around the room, and I just felt it sounds so cheesy, but I just felt overwhelmingly lucky to know so many great people, and that was what made me cry. And then I turned around and I saw my sister, like, weeping in the corner, so that was what made me cry. But it's really surreal, and it's incredibly special to have a book coming out, because books have just defined my life in so many ways, and the idea that it might mean what my favourite books meant to me as a child to a child is so incredibly...
You're going to get letters.
Oh my goodness, I got my first card from the daughter of someone who works at HarperCollins who'd read an early one, and she made me a card, and that was the other time I've cried.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's really easy to get caught up, especially when you know the industry, to get caught up in PR and marketing and sales and all of that, which is important.
Yes.
And it has to be done and understood, and it's good, and the people who do it are amazing. But particularly when you've written a children's book, I find it very... That's what I think about if I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. Is
that actually who I've actually written it for. And I have that card on my desk, and when I'm struggling with book 2, it's... I look at that, because it's pretty magical to think that a child has read it and just enjoyed it, and that's what gets me. Yeah.
I was sent a picture of a book, and it said, once upon a time there was an author called Jen Campbell, and then this little boy had drawn a dragon, and I was just like, oh my god, I'm gonna cry. And someone went as Franklin for World Cup Day. There's gonna be Tilly.
Although Tilly's just like, I'm like, I should have given her a more distinctive outfit, because I'm like, she's really couldn't. She's just like a regular. Like, I should have given her like a really obvious, I don't know, like a weird hairstyle, or like weird glasses.
Parents can, if they're stuck as well, they just be like, Tilly.
Yeah, great. Yourself. No, there we go. That's what I'm actually helping parents.
You are helping out the
give
parents.
them a book to hold. Like, give them a copy. Oh no, I was going to say a copy that really would give something in the book away. Give them a copy of Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a book that's important, but I probably could mention it and it wouldn't give away any of the specifics, but I'm not going to risk it.
The problem is that we know why it's important, so we're reading into things that other people wouldn't. But now we've said that, we definitely can't say what the book is.
Yeah, no, fair. It's hard to tell when you know all the plot twists, to be like, I feel like I'm sometimes like I can't work out what I can say and what I can't say without giving everything away, because I know it all. Okay.
I always ask everyone this at the end of a podcast. What is a book that you would recommend at the moment?
Can I do one that's out and one that's not out yet?
Yeah, you can do that, yeah.
Because the one I really want to recommend isn't out till March, and I realise that's really annoying when people do that, because it's quite far away. But I just read A Proof of the Doll Factory by Elizabeth McNeil.
So excited to read
It's so good. It's set in, like, it's about, like, the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, and it's set in London, and it's about art and gender and, like, power, and it's so good. It's really in the vein of, like, The Miniaturist and The Essex Serpent, that really blend of, like, really good writing, but it's got a proper plot. It's really tense.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it more than both of those books, I liked both of those books, but this is just, I really loved it. It ticks so many of my boxes. So that's coming out in March.
Oh, and also that's actually really good, because they sent me 2 proof copies. So guys listening, if you guys would like to win a proof copy, we did not plan this.
No.
This is good. So if you would like to win a copy of that book, leave a comment down below, or if you're listening to this on the podcast app, drop me a tweet and just say that you're interested in winning it, and I'll pick a winner by the 10th of October. There we go. So you've got a little while.
Excellent.
Yeah. No,
okay,
I'm
that's
also follow her on Instagram and look at all the pottery that
she's
she
a
makes.
potter as well. Actually, we're not recording visually, but Elizabeth made me a mug. We know each other through just Twitter, and then I just read the book and we've just been chatting, and she made me a mug for my book.
Oh, that's
which is really
nice.
Yeah. So she's generally brilliant.
How old is she?
Like, I would say, I feel like late 20s.
I think she's younger than us, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, if you listen to this and I've got that horribly wrong. I would say late 20s, yeah. One of those disgustingly talented young people. I mean,
we hate them.
Fairly young, I hope. So
I've
got a 3 at the start now. So. And then the book that's out now, I'm reading America Is Not the Heart at the moment by Elaine Castillo, which is about sort of race and immigration and food and sex in 90s America.
Are you doing a Cheltenham event for that? Yes.
Yeah, and I'm really... It's one of those... You'll know this. You know, read a lot of books for events, and it's just always such a pleasure when it's... It's one of those books I'm so glad that I had a reason to read it, because it's brilliant. Yeah. It's really good. So I'd really recommend that as well.
Cool. Well, as Ellen said, she's going to be at Cheltenham and she'll be at other places too, and you can come. Yes. Find out, go to her website to find out where she's going to be.
No, I have a proper way. I need to. Well, I have
Don't go to her website.
I need to turn my website into something that's authory, or start a new authory one.
Okay, go to
Twitter.
All right, go to Twitter. Find out where she is. Don't stalk her. Be nice about it. Yeah. And so thank you. This was very nice.
Thank you.
We've just been eating donuts and drinking tea, and it's
perfect.
Just lovely.
Perfect.
Excellent. We're going to go do some work now.
Or eating.
We're going to go
more
eat.
Eating.
Not more donuts, but we're going to go eat something else. Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye.